Hello, and welcome to Waves of YA, a podcast focused on young adult literacy, brought to you by the Ocean County Library's Teen Literacy Workgroup.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Waves of YA podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about YA book and movie adaptation. My name is Casey, and I'm a YA librarian from the Lakewood branch.
My name's Vince. I'm the young adult librarian from the Manchester branch.
And my name's Ryan. I'm one of the young adult librarians here in the Toms River branch.
Wonderful. Let's get started off with an easy question. What's your favorite YA book to movie adaptations?
That's a good one.
That's a good question, yeah.
There's this movie called Malevolent. It came out in 2018 with Florence Pugh.
Was that a horror movie, Casey? Was that horror?
It sure is. And the name of the book is called Hush. It's not Malevolent, and it's a really good movie. And I have yet to read the book, but I know the movie was fantastic, and I've looked on Goodreads and stuff, and I've seen nothing but good things about the book, too. So that one's mine.
Was it a faithful adaptation, Casey?
I haven't read the book yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so I picked Every Day, based on the book by David Levithan. Every Day, it's a young adult book. It tells the story of Rhiannon, who's about 15, 16 in the book, and she falls in love with a teen about her age named A, and every day A wakes up, A is a different person. So A could be a boy, A could be a girl, black, white. A swaps souls essentially every day. So, and the idea is that how do you stay in love with this person who changes bodies, who looks differently, literally different every day? And in the book, you get this, it's first person narration from A's point of view. But in the movie, obviously, because it's a different medium, they had to change things. So they added different actors. They added more social media aspects to it because the book was written before Instagram and Facebook took off. So a lot of those things added good ways of connectivity versus like if you can't tell what a person looks like every day, how are you going to talk to them? That sort of thing.
That sounds really good.
Yeah,
that's a great one. I think mine would have to be A Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks. Mm-hmm. And I didn't finish the book. I tried reading it. It was equal parts like epistolary. There were like journal entry things in it. And then it was also set during like the 1950s, 1960s. So there was just, I think the movie, what I really liked about the movie, it has Shane West and Mandy Moore. It's a romance, obviously. It's like a tragic romance. And I think what they really did wonderfully with the movie was they adapted it to modern times. So it happened during like the 2000s, early 2000s. See you on the flip side, that kind of 2000s. And I think they made it more accessible to audiences because, you know, you're not watching a 1950s, 1960s old fashioned thing. And I think it was just really well done. It pulls your heartstrings. It makes you cry. It's great for a rom-com night with your friends. So
that sounds really good too. I'm gonna have to add some things onto my reading list.
yeah, same with Malevolent and Every Day.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Malevolent.
It was crazy, but it was really good. Mm-hmm. But Fleur feels good in everything that she does. So, our next question is: what makes an adaptation good or bad? I won't start this time. I don't want to hog.
I personally think so. I'm very like half and half. I'm an Arnold Palmer right now. Half of it is I think you have to be faithful to the source material because that's how it was intended. Yeah. That's how the creator intended it. Minor changes is fine, but when you start making larger and larger changes, then you're changing the whole thing entirely, and you're making it not an adaptation, but you're making it like kind of like a fanficky, your own work type thing. At the same time, I also think a great adaptation doesn't require the watcher to, if they didn't read the book, they can just enter and have a good time. So I think it's equal parts of those things, but definitely at least get the core ideas of the narrative down, translating it. It's important.
I would have to agree.
Yeah, I agree too.
I feel like as long as it maintains the heart and most of the contact matter of the piece, it could be a good adaptation. Say they make minor changes, but the heart of the story is still there, the main message, most of the characters are still the same. Say they tweak little things. I understand that not everything translates nicely from medium to medium. As an example, Dracula is 1,000% epistolary. When you're adapting that, you can't just have text on the screen. You have to, you know what's happening. So even though they get rid of that, which is an important part of the novel, it's still Dracula.
Yeah, no, that's a good point to bring up too. And to Vince's point earlier with the Walk to Remember, I didn't know that was set in the 50s in the original book because I had seen the movie, when I was a teen. And then to see that, I was like, oh yeah, that's just a 2000s movie, whatever. But that's a big change they made, taking it out of the 1950s and bringing it up to speed, but still keeping like that core part of the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, to keep the core part of whatever the narrative is, Dracula, Walk to Remember, that can help. I think it's when you start making changes just to make changes, either it's a studio note or like a series, and so they need to get to the next cliffhanger or something like that, or you're just, well, this doesn't work, we'll just change this because the director or the writer wants to do their own version of the story or something, So
I will give one example of like a bad way to do this. It's not necessarily YA, but I mean, I read it when I was a teen. The Watchmen comic and movie.
Oh,
yeah. I don't want to.
Do we do spoilers? We could do spoiler alert.
Spoilers?
Right. For those of you who are listening, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Instead of the bomb being a giant squid telepathic monster that goes to one city, in the movie it is they blame Dr. Manhattan for it. And I feel like taking the giant telepathic squid out of it is just so sad because it loses some of the zany. I mean, it works. It works.
Yeah.
But exactly, it loses the point. It's a practical joke.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Casey. I 100%. And just like Ryan, I feel like we both agree with you. I think if you make it Dr. Manhattan, the whole point of that whole trick by Asmodeus is that there's this race of hostile aliens that could come back. And they're out there and they outnumber us. If you just make it one person, and you just make it Dr. Manhattan, he's not as big of a threat as those telepathic squids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our next question, I agree. I'm not trying to say what
no, it's all right.
The next question. Do you think that any genres lend themselves to being more adaptable than others? And do you think that others are less adaptable than others?
Do you mind if I start off?
Go ahead.
I think with some adaptations, there's obviously like trends. So like when Hunger Games was coming out, obviously there was more dystopian type trends. So every type of dystopian YA book or even like a dystopian book for adults was getting made into a movie. So like your Divergents, your Darkest Minds, things like that, The Fifth Wave, a couple other ones. But I think the ones that are probably easiest to adapt that aren't fantasy series or dystopian types are probably going to be your like more realistic fiction ones. So Fault in Our Stars, Miseducation of Cameron Post, those two are very realistic. There's no monsters. There's no trying to take down a government or anything like that. It's all just two kids falling in love or something like that. Or in the case of Miseducation of Cameron Post, it's about conversion therapy. So like that's something that can really easily lend. You could change the time period around if you need to. You can change some of the names around too. Changes like that are okay.
I completely agree with you. I feel like the bigger the world, the more world building there is to something, science fiction, fantasy, horror. I think that's where a lot of things get cut because the world is so vast and there's so many characters and stuff. But with realistic fiction, all you have to do is ground it in the world we live in. And that cuts out a lot of things. That cuts out magic. That cuts out monsters and ghosts and stuff. There's a book called 5 Feet Apart. It's about two teens that have cystic fibrosis. That was another adaptation I really love because I think they kept the essentials without removing too much.
My answer to this is kind of a loophole. My answer to what's really good at being adapted is comic book. The animated movies they make from comic books. So good.
Yeah.
You can get away with a lot. Yeah, it's like Justice League.
Okay.
I will say, because there is a less to this, the realistic superhero movies I sometimes have a problem with. live action. That's what I mean. The live action ones versus
Mhm.
the animated ones. I tend to like the animated ones more, even though a lot of times they're geared towards kids, so they throw in some little kid jokes. But I don't know. I feel like they maintain the general vibes better than the movies because you know the joke. DC movies are really dark. Where Marvel movies, there's so many of them and they're all the same. So that's my loophole answer because I feel like it fits both and it's not necessarily being adapted by people, it's being adapted by artists.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about the MCU then? Because like in the comics, someone dies and gets brought back and then dies and gets brought back. Like, do you like the way they've incorporated the comic book counterparts in MCU?
I will say I'm more of a DC person, which is why I'm so sad that the movies are DC so dark.
So.
But I think that I'm very excited for Superman, by the way.
Yeah.
I think that the very beginning of the MCU, the first wave, was fine. I enjoyed those movies. I thought that they clung to it, but as they go on, it becomes less about telling the story than it is about we have this franchise, we want to continue, we're making a lot of money. Why would I stop making Captain America movies? You know? So that's where I think they fall off once they turn into like this money grab. Not that movies aren't money grabs in general. You have to make money off the movie for them to be. Anyway, once they're made solely for that purpose, as opposed to the.
Yeah.
Now, our next question: what piece of YA media do you wish would be adapted?
I think I can start off with this one. It's happening as we speak, and they've gotten extremely better at it. But I think adapting video game franchises is becoming more and more prevalent these days with the success of Fallout and with everything. I know we're talking about YA book adaptions, but I'm sure there are YA games out there.
Oh, yeah. There's games rated T for teens.
Yeah. I just feel like that's a whole world of storytelling that is only accessible to a certain number of people because not everyone's a gamer. Not everyone finds joy in video games and everything. And there's a lot of really great hidden stories out there that can teach lessons to kids and is actually like really emotional and thought-provoking. So I think they're understanding that now because there's so much successful adaptions. So I hope we see more, like all the franchises, all the good ones.
I would agree. Yeah, video games are probably like not the last piece of media, but I think that would be the next, like you said, the future wave of media coming through. I mean, unless it's something like they're adapting like a TikTok story or something like that. That's the only thing I can think of, like a YA TikTok narrative or something. But yeah, and with games, that's where the adaptions are going to change a lot because you're not, as a video game, you play it, you're in control. But with a story, it's a narrative you're like taken along with. So you're being told that story. So like, obviously there's going to be bigger changes to that. So, and obviously the teens do like video games. So we have a lot of that. We have a lot of teens who do ask about like that, or like, oh, what would be like a good game or something? Or, oh, I read this book. Could you recommend a game or something like that goes along with it? And they just did the Mario one, but they're doing Sonic, right? That's the next two ones for video games. Yeah. So I feel like that could go into more where we see like other characters or like The Legend of Zelda or something becoming like a fantasy movie or something. That would be pretty cool.
Not that I don't like video games. I'm just so bad at them. I played Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Oh, that's scary. She loves horror, I think. I think she loves horror.
And the first thing I had to the first thing you have to do is open a door. And I went to the door and I was trying to open it and it wouldn't open. So I thought the game was glitching. So I went to like get out of it and then start it back up again. I got the coward little achievement in the corner. And it turned out that I was pushing the door the wrong way. My problem. But I do think generally when I do play games, I tend to enjoy the story, even when I'm really bad at the mechanics of me playing and whatnot. Like I really like playing the Uncharted games. I think those are P for T. Are they P for T or are they M?
They're rated M, but I think I could be wrong, but I'm sure they're rated teen.
Yeah, they're fun. They're like little Indiana Jones games. I love the Lego games.
Yeah,
and they made like the Lego movies, which are fun. But the thing that I want to see adapted that I read this book. It's called Hearts Still Beating.
Brooke Archer.
Brooke Archer, yes, that's her. It's a zombie book, and there are these two girls. They were got a date before the zombie apocalypse happened. Then one of them got bit, and the other one didn't. And then they find a cure years into it. And the girl that was on, she's still a zombie, but she regains her consciousness, and they try to rekindle their friendship, but she doesn't trust her because she's been having to kill zombies all this time. And it's so interesting. I sped through it really fast, and I just love the world building in it. So I feel like I would love to see that as a movie.
Can I give an example? I just actually thought of one while we were talking.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, one of the ones I had read it over the summer. I think it came out this year, 2024. It was called The Second Chance of Darius Logan. I want to say it's by David Walker. So it's set in a world of superheroes, but it's not like Marvel or DC or anything like that. So it's got its own analogs like Batman and Wonder Woman and, Captain America and things like that. But it's with a teen who he's not making good choices in life. So he's going through a juvenile detention program. And one of the ways he can not go to prison or do other types of jail time is to work with these superheroes in like a rehabilitation program at their headquarters. So when he does that, he gets to come into contact with all sorts of different types of superheroes and those things. And, there's Avengers. And I was thinking, when I was reading it, I was like, man, this is so vividly written and the world building is so great. It would make like a really good series. And then I was looking at the author and he had written it for comics too. So I'm like, oh, okay. So that makes sense. He's got that foot in that world of like good world building and how to make these characters feel like real people too.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good.
No, I want to like it.
So 2 things I wanted to add. One, you were right, Casey. The Uncharted games are rated T for teens. So they are accessible. They're like miniature Indiana Jones journeys, every game. And 2, listening to all of you mention books that you wanted adapted, I want The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab.
Oh, I love that book.
I hope that's adapted to a miniseries or a movie or something, but I love the idea of someone living so long and nobody remembering her, and all of a sudden someone remembers her. So I feel like that's like a grand love story that needs to be shown.
This isn't really a question that we have listed, but it's a question I just thought of. Do you guys think that the limited series would be better sometimes for adapting books rather than a movie?
I think it depends on the book. There's a book series I like. It's an adult book series. So it's The Magicians by Lev Grossman. They made a sci-fi series about it maybe 5 years ago, and it's got about 5 seasons. Yeah. And they changed a lot from the books are and things like those, the way those storylines go. But the way they expanded a lot of things by using a series, I was like, oh, that's really cool and interesting. And they went in different story paths and different narratives and things. So that was really cool. I think, again, like I said, it just depends. Like, I can't imagine the Lord of the Rings movies as a series because they're just so like perfect as a movie. I don't know if I'm starting.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it really depends, just like what you both said. I think it really depends on how grand a scope a story is, because that's what they're doing with Harry Potter. They're rebooting it for HBO. They cut a lot of things out in the Harry Potter movies from the books. And we can talk about that at a later time. But I think if you do a mini series with something and each book has its own season, you have a better chance of keeping really authentic things about the story intact and stuff. I mean, that's why the Game of Thrones, we pretend season 7 and 8 didn't happen. Okay, well, season 8 and 7. But I think that's why that was so successful, because those books are so fat and thick. And they adapted them in really good episodes before it sucked, of course.
Speaking of Tolkien's Legendarium, we all know that there is a series on Amazon that was
Rings of Power.
That was meant to be the Silmarillion. And we all know it was terrible. I'm not taking debates on this.
Okay.
What made it so terrible, Casey? Can you say it?
What made it so terrible? Okay, so this could be a podcast for me ranting on my own for an hour by myself. But what makes it so terrible is Tolkien created this world in the trenches in World War One. He sunk his whole life into this universe. The Silmarillion was not ready when he died because it was his baby. It was what he was working on, his life's work. It's essentially, if you haven't read the Silmarillion, it's the Lord of the Rings Bible. And he didn't finish it in his lifetime because there was so much he wanted to add and perfect and whatnot. And then taking it, dumbing it down, and then stripping it of characters and putting it to its bare bones. Oh my God, it drove me insane. I watched 3 episodes and then I got too angry to watch anymore. But
did they intend it to be a prequel with like Galadriel and everyone?
Galadriel's in it, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Galadriel's in it. She only has one brother who dies without doing all of the amazing things that he does. They're trying to make Lord of the Rings into a TV series like that. And that's why, like you, Ryan, I am very skeptical about whether or not they will do it correctly. But I will say, in defense of series, this is not a kid series, but there's a TV series called Hannibal. It's one of my favorite TV series
Hannibal
ever.
Lecter.
Oh, yeah. Hannibal,
yes. And does it diverge from the book? Sort of, because it takes stuff from the different books and puts it into like the prequel stuff. But it's also a very good builder of the universe. Yeah. And I love that series. So
didn't they make Will Graham and Hannibal like in love with each other slightly?
Yeah, they did. It's in the last episode. It's a whole, whole other podcast.
I'd have to podcast, yeah.
Yeah. But so like that series was very good. They're technically not strangers to making Hannibal fall in love with people he's opposing. Like the Hannibal book, literally entitled Hannibal, Clarice Starling and him end up together, which I did not like.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
But
ew, wait a minute. Why?
Yeah, no, it was gross.
He's a serial killer.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? So that's my defense of series rant. To get on to the next point, because Vince, you did mention Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So the question reads, in the case of Harry Potter, so much content from the books was cut from the movies. Why do you think directors and/or studios do this? How is it decided which parts of a narrative are important for the plot and characters?
I was just thinking, because I get both points. A movie has a limited runtime. If you adapt everything, it's going to go 4 hours, 5 hours. And who gets to decide what stays and what goes, you know? How do you decide what to subtract from a story in order to still make it a story, especially when it's like a school where all these crazy side stories happens, like in Harry Potter? I just wanted to present that question to both of you because I really don't know the answer to that because I understand both sides of the argument.
As a writer, I learned that everything that an author puts on the page has meaning, and I've experienced it myself. Like, you don't just put parts of the storyline in there just because it all leads to something greater. Mm-hmm. But there are things that could be trimmed away and you still get that storyline, if it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm writing a story about me going to the mall, if I write a quick segment that makes me stop at Target first to grab something and then go to the mall, I ultimately still end up at the mall. So the Target part does not affect the end result of me going to the mall. But say there's a plot point where I don't get to the mall because there's a bunch of deer in the street and they stay there and I have to honk my horn at them until they move, and that prevents me from going to the mall, then yeah. But if it's something that is necessary or preventing the main thing from happening, then I feel like it's essential to include in the movie. Whereas if it's something that's not superfluous, but it's almost an aside where, yes, it's ultimately going to lead to the goal, but it doesn't offer any kind of hindrance or help, it could kind of be pushed away.
Yeah.
In reference to Harry Potter, I've only read the first 2.5 books.
Oh, man, we need to fix that. Can we fix that, please?
Here's the thing with Harry Potter. I do not want to give her any more of my money. And that's all I will say about her without getting into things.
Well, you can save money for using your local library, so.
Yeah,
true.
There you go.
But I will say, I think in the first one, they go into the woods and look for this unicorn, and there's this whole chase thing. Does that happen in the movie?
Yeah, that's in the movie.
It's cut down though.
It's
cut down. Yeah.
Trimmed.
So like they don't include all the details in it, but it's there.
No. So I'm gonna. Oh wait, fine. You go. You go, Ryan.
Oh no. I was just agreeing with Casey. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just gonna do a minor little tangent because it's similar to what Casey did with the Watchmen. Spoiler alert! If you did not read the book, spoiler alert. But
should I close my ears?
No, you can if you want. In Half-Blood Prince, you read them, Ryan, right?
Yeah, I read the books. And
so one of the unforgivable sins that I feel like the movie series has done was that they're in the Half-Blood Prince. It really goes into the origins of Voldemort, why he is the way he is, his upbringing, his childhood, and everything. And in the movie, they cut out his mother. And I think that is so wrong because part of the reason why he is the way he is because of what happened with his mother and his father. And I think if you cut out, that's a thing that may seem minor, you cut it out and you make room for other things. But then the whole point of that story is finding out Voldemort's weakness. I can't get over that. That's such a bad thing to cut out, you know?
Yeah.
I don't get why they do that.
And changes like that, it's like you wonder if, and I'm not trying to spoil too much from the book or the movies for our listeners who haven't seen them yet or read the books. You wonder if that's like a studio note or something. They're like, oh, okay, we don't really need this part about the mom because it doesn't really affect what's going to happen in the plot later on, that sort of thing. Or you wonder if it's a content situation of they're like, oh, this is too dark. We can't have this in this movie. We're trying to sell it to little kids. We got to push out those Harry Potter Lego toys and stuff, you know? So I wonder if it's that kind of situation, or maybe like you said, maybe they are kind of booked into that 2-hour time limit because that's what they've, sold the movie on. It's going to be 2 hours. It'll be PG, and that's it. And then you can see it as many times as you want or something like that. So like they're kind of stuck in that box.
I'm trying to think if there's any time that they've changed something that's substantial and it has worked. Like if I could think of a movie where that.
That is a good question.
That is a very good question.
I might have to think on it, but.
Yeah, I have to think on it too.
Yeah.
I'm sure
they're coming up as bad examples.
I thought of a perfect example. Candyman. The story by I'm sorry.
No,
the short story by Clive Barker is fine. And that's one of the only times you'll ever hear me say that because I love Clive Barker. But the movie itself is just, it's beautiful. The book is very bare bones versus the movie wherein she's writing this paper, this, that, and that happens. And so they add a husband character to the movie. They add an affair. They add other kid. They add like this whole insanity kind of arc. None of that is really in the book. It's just like, oh, Candyman notices her. He takes her. She dies again. But the story just adds this almost like a Phantom of the Opera kind of dark romance level of it. It's to it. And it's just, I love that movie. So, I feel like that's the only one that I could think of off the top of my head.
You're talking about like all the atmosphere and stuff, like the music and the casting and like all that stuff they added to it. Like you said, because the regular book in the story, it's like, oh, that's kind of plain. But then like they add all these different plot lines and there's different music. And you've got great casting with Tony Todd. And I think it's Virginia Madison is the actress.
Tony Todd.
Yeah, R.I.P. All that casting really goes a long way to like really enhancing that adaptation of the book. And I'm trying to think of a good one off the top of my head too. And I can't think of any because they're all bad is the problem.
I think I have one. But it's not really a YA book. It's a horror book. So it should be around Casey's alley. The Mist by Stephen King.
Oh,
even Stephen King said the movie ending was better.
Yeah.
The ending of the movie is so much darker, so much more brutalizing than than the book.
Well, we won't say what the ending is.
I won't say it, but I'm just saying the book is a happy ending for the most part, and the movie is a terrible. You rolled a 1 in D&D ending.
Yeah.
So
even Stephen King, when he saw the movie, he was like, "Man, why didn't I think of that?"
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's a good change.
I thought of one more. The last one, also Clive Barker. The book is Hellbound Heart, but you would know the movie as Hellraiser.
Yeah.
In the book, the main character Christy is a friend of the dad, and then Julia is the wife, and then it goes on. But in the movie, they changed her to the daughter. And I don't know, I feel like it added a more personable level to it, because when she finds out his body is taken and puppeted by Frank, you're just like, oh, okay, she's a friend. And I mean, that's awful, but it's 10 times more horrible when it's your father.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to read the last question, Casey?
Yes, I can. How do you feel about changes that are made to books and narratives when it's adapted to film? Do you agree with it? And if so, why?
I have an example of that, and it's a horror movie. See, the whole reason why Casey isn't so successful right now, she's appealing to the horror in all of us. So
that's true. Yeah.
The Thing by Carpenter. The book had more people in the Arctic station, like 20 plus people.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. And it wasn't nearly as action packed as the movie. Okay. I think the reason why the movie The Thing is such a better adaptation is because they decreased the number to less than 10 people. And I think when you do that, it's slightly more scary because then you only have limited number of humans that are left.
The name of the book, just for those listening, is Who Goes There?
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about that book, though. I love that movie so much.
This is such a good movie. Yeah. I watch it every Halloween.
Yeah, it's a great one. Which is funny, too, because that is a remake of an adaptation originally back in like the 50s or something. So that's like you had 2 chances to make this into an adaptation. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Apparently, the first Thing is also pretty good. I haven't seen it, but apparently it's also good. It's just different.
It's 50s, but it's not. Like Vince said, there's not 20 people in there. I think there's maybe 10 or 11, maybe 15 at most in there. Mm-hmm. It's not as visceral as John Carpenter's one because, it's 1950, whatever. But it still is pretty good. It's like a nice little tense thriller. I think it's under 90 minutes. It's pretty short.
Yeah.
And then they made it again in the 90s, and we don't talk about it because they use CGI.
Yeah. Oh, we don't talk about that one.
Oh.
It doesn't exist.
Ryan, what do you think about this question?
I think if the changes are done in good faith, if they're made in service of the narrative, like a book's narrative, in the book's story, then I'm okay with that because to bring Lord of the Rings into it, the movies are very much different than the books in terms of how their A, B, and C plots work. Because some characters have other characters' lines, some characters are linked up in terms of like plot location or physical location, just because that's where it works in terms of their story. And that still works. You can still follow the story. You can understand what the characters are going through. You understand what's at stake. You understand the whole scope of everything. It never feels like it's confusing or anything. It doesn't feel like changes are made arbitrarily to be like, let's make this one cooler or whatever. We'll do something just to change it, just to be different, that sort of thing. And I think it's when they make changes to just either get it because like they've got a studio note or they've got a change just because, well, we wanted to do it different this time or something like that, or we didn't like how it was in the book or whatever, And again, it also depends on the type of genre too. I think for something like horror, Stephen King, that sort of thing, changing some of those endings or changing the way the plots maneuver around, that's okay. I think if you change certain stories around where you just change to change, then it's going to be a little complicated.
I have an example off the top of my head, the Hobbit movies.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So in spite of all my horror, everything, The Hobbit is actually my favorite book. I love, love, love The Hobbit. And the first movie, I guess, was slightly fine. Like, yes, technically, the White Orc only is mentioned in one sentence in the beginning of The Hobbit. But you know what? I was like, okay, I'll let it slide for this one. And then they introduced Toriel and they introduced Legolas. Even though that is Legolas's dad, I was like, why are they here? And then they had that romance, which my sister loved, but I was like, why is this here?
Oh, the elf and the dwarf
changes
romance?
For changes. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I was so concerned that because they added that romance, they weren't going to do like killing off Killy at the end. I thought they were going to keep him. And I was like, God, why would you do this to this perfect book?
Yeah.
So that's what I feel like changes were definitely made to make changes. Oh, they gave Baron kids. Like, why?
So do you think part of the reason why it didn't do so well, Casey, in your opinion, do you think it's because they stretched out one book so wide that it was no longer The Hobbit? Or do you think it would have been better as one movie?
I feel like they could have reasonably done it in two, I think. I think they could have kind of split it down the middle, because there is a lot in the book. I will say there is a lot in the book. And that might have been flowing over, but the third movie was literally just the Battle of the Five Armies. That was the whole third movie.
That was it, yeah.
Which is 1.5 chapters, 2 chapters of The Hobbit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But for something that this does work, I want to actually give an adaptation that's actually of a book in a different book. There's a story by H.P. Lovecraft. It's called The Horror at Red Hook. It is pretty bad on the racism, like H.P. Lovecraft, really horrible racist, great storyteller, bad racist. Anyway, he wrote that story, and years later, there's this author, his name is Victor Laval, and he wrote The Ballad of Black Tom, which is a retelling of The Horror at Red Hook, but instead of keeping it, he sort of twisted it, so the racism that the story was rooted on twisted, and then it became like a sort of empowerment kind of story. It's still dark and it's still eldritch, but somehow there is a reclaiming of agency in the summoning of the eldritch. It was so interesting and I loved it.
How did you feel about Lovecraft Country, that HBO thing?
I have not seen the show yet. I need to.
Seen it either.
My problem in life is, for some reason, I can justify watching a 3-hour movie, but watching like 3 episodes of a TV series, I'm just like, I don't have time for that.
Same,
I don't know why.
It's like, oh, that's a big commitment. I'm like,
oh.
Unless it's a K-drama, I'm not willing to commit to that.
Go ahead.
I have one more. This movie was actually made, and then the author of the book was like, no, and it was supposed to be destroyed, but it wasn't. And that movie is Nosferatu.
See what you did there.
The original Nosferatu was made illegally, and the Stoker estate was like, hey, stop it. You can't make that. And they were supposed to destroy it, but they didn't. I love Dracula. Dracula is probably my favorite horror novel. I read it every October. And I also love Nosferatu because it changes it, but it's also a very, I feel like it's sort of, it's a feminist story. And that the woman is the one with the agency. There's also a whole queer retelling of it that I wrote a paper on, but it's in German, so I can't like tell you anything from it. And then like they changed it to the movie that they just released. I'm going to see it the 4th time this weekend.
Oh,
it's
nice.
Probably my favorite movie of all time.
Oh, so, with the Robert Eggers one.
That's
right?
cool.
Yes. So they changed the location, they changed names, they changed characters' roles. And yet they change full events and have some of the bare bones still there, that it's enough that they got slammed for copyright. And yet it's still fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Someone else had, I think, Ryan, you said you had another example. I'm so sorry. I just had to
no, it's okay. No, it's Nosferatu.
I have one
great.
after him too.
Yeah. I was just thinking while we were talking, it's the comic book series Invincible by Robert Kirkman. Yeah. So
on Amazon.
On Amazon. Yeah. So that's where it's done in animation. So you still keep some of the style of like the characters and the worlds, and like there's aliens and monsters and all those things, but they still change some things up, because once the show came out, I was reading some of the comics, see what the differences were and like what the original stories were like. And they did change a lot of things from it. The way the main season 1 storyline, and I'm trying not to spoil it, so I apologize, listener, for being vague, was moved up from where it happens in the first couple of episodes. So like there's a big twist that got moved later down. The one got moved up. So then what it did was to make like a lot of tension with other characters, so that you as the audience member knew what was going on, but the other characters didn't. So you're like, oh, what's going to happen now? How's this going to play out? So like that was really cool. And the animation, they do a pretty good style of like matching the illustrations in the comic and stuff.
They do.
One thing that I had, that's a great example, Ryan.
Nice.
But
it really
the Dark Knight, I believe, by Christopher Nolan.
Okay.
It's a comic book movie, so this is right up Casey's alley.
Yeah.
Because it's DC. It was adapted from The Long Halloween, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did Harvey Dent's story real justice, because he gets disfigured, I believe, spoiler alert for the book, during a trial. But in this one, it's done because of the Joker. Casey,
I love that movie.
Have you watched
That's a good one.
Robert Eggers? And then this is for you, Ryan, because you're both movie buffs. Have you both watched the rest of Robert Eggers' films, like The Lighthouse and The Witch?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Are they adaptations or just asking in general?
I'm just asking because we're like, you're all horror lovers.
I think The Northman might be like a serial numbers filed off thing of like Hamlet, but like a Danish version of Hamlet. Like there's some folk thing with the original Danish version of Hamlet, but I'm not 100% on that. And I think The Witch and The Lighthouse are both original. Nosferatu obviously is a remake of the 20s one, and then the one in the 70s, but which is also, just Dracula. But yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I want to.
Robert Eggers completely changed my opinion of Robert Pattinson, because before that, my only
Twilight
experience of him was Twilight. Speaking of YA book adaptations, and the Twilight movies, I hate to say it, I know some people are going to come after me, are horrible. So, I was like, okay, this guy can't act. And I have a really good friend, and he was like, no, you just got to trust me, give it a chance. I don't like horrible movies like that. And I was like, okay. So I watched The Lighthouse, and I was like, oh my God, now I can trust him to play Batman. So,
did you like him as Batman?
I did like him as Batman.
Yeah, I liked him too.
I also really liked Riddler as a Reddit boy. Which, speaking of, there is a movie to comic book adaptation from that, written by Paul Dano, who plays Riddler in that movie.
Interesting.
It's called Riddler Year One, I think. Paul Dano wrote it sort of like as a backstory for his Riddler in the Batman movie. I haven't read it yet, but it's actually on my desk.
I want to read it now.
Yes. I know. I love comic books. I can't.
Yeah, they're fun.
As you can see, I have the Hulk behind me, and then Obi-Wan. Both are drawn in by a comic book artist.
Very cool. What's the worst adaptation you guys have ever seen?
I'm thinking of ending things is a book. I have never read the book because I watched the movie and I wanted to vanish from existence until it was over. The movie just made no sense. And then when I read the plot of the book, it felt like it would make a lot more sense in the book. But in movie format, it made zero sense. The first 15 minutes were intelligible, and then the rest were just, what am I watching?
Oh, okay. Yeah. For me, they made a mini series out of Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea, the first book, Wizard of Earthsea. This was like 20 years ago, so 2004, and they had like no money. You could tell there was no money. Like that's how bad it was. And they made so many changes to the story. They changed the main character's race. In the book, he's a darker skinned individual. They changed the main story plot of what happens to him and who helps him out. Those things. Bad guys in the book are now good guys. Another character who doesn't show up for 3 more books or something like that later on in the story was the main mentor type character. And it was just what are you doing? Why are you doing this? It was literally the first time I ever was so angry at this. It made me so mad. Why did you change so much? What was the point of this? And
that's horrible because Ursula Le Guin is such a good writer.
She is. She's so good. She's one I always recommend as a gateway into fantasy, her first book, Wizard of Earthsea, just because it does have a lot of the tropes of the magic school and a magic system and different fantasy type things. And it's really it's short too, which is great. And a lot of readers seem to like that.
Hey, it was nice talking to all of you.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming.
Podcast.
Yay, Ryan! Yay. Did you like it?
I did like it. So
Yay! And thank you, listener, for listening to this Waves of YA podcast on YA book and movie adaptations. We will see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to check out the Ocean County Library's website for more podcasts and events. All titles mentioned in today's episode can be found through the Ocean County Library, free with your library card. Until next time, happy reading.
Hello, adventurers. If you enjoy this content, please take a look at the Ocean County Library's new podcast called Forge Your Imagination, a guide to immersive world building. This new podcast is dedicated to helping creative individuals design their own expertly crafted worlds for books, games, Dungeons & Dragons, and more. Tune in on the first Wednesday morning of every month to learn more. Thanks for listening, and safe travels, adventurers.